Good morning, everyone. We are back today to the book Liberation by the Spirit Andre Luiz. Let me share here. Here we go. So in this chapter, chapter 8, that we haven't finished yet, we find Andre Luiz with the mentor Gubbio and Andre Luiz's colleague Eloy meeting with Gregorio, the former Pope Gregory IX, which was one of, we study in On the Way to the Light, one of the responsibles for starting the Inquisition. Gregorio now is the leader of the lower zones, a region of the lower zones, and it's a hardened spirit, still inclined to do evil and persecute, according to his own ideas of justice, following his incarnation as the Pope. He follows a lot of he represents a lot of what we see in terms of the how they dress, how the hierarchy works, and we saw last month a long discussion between Gubbio and Gregorio. Of course, Andre Luiz and Eloy are just watching. They don't have the knowledge and the ability to enter into the discussion. So Gubbio is the only one in the discussion. We are going to start today when they go into a little bit more specific, when Gubbio starts explaining to Gregorio why they went there. It's, of course, we know that they went there under the orders of Gregorio's former mother in the physical realm, Margarida, to rescue him, Gregorio. But the way they are going to do it is through Matilda is the mother of Gregorio, through Margarida, a former daughter of Gubbio that is incarnated and in need of assistance. So we are going to start from there, where we read here, faced with such courage, because before that it was just the discussion between Gubbio and Gregorio on their different ideas. Of course, Gregorio doesn't really know who Gubbio is and Andre Luiz and Eloy. He just knows that they are there to give a message from Matilde, Gregorio's mother, and he's not very pleased with all these interactions related to Matilde. He thinks that they are in separate paths and separate worlds in a sense, and there is nothing for them to be united with. Okay, so Philip, you're reading for us?
If you need me, yes.
Sure, starting with faced with such courage.
Faced with such courage, Gregorio stared at Gubbio in amazement, and obviously taking advantage of the moment's psychological transformation, Gubbio stated with serene firmness, Matilde, our benefactor, told us that you have not forsaken your worthiness and that your lofty qualities of character have remained inviolable, in spite of the different direction you have taken. That is why I can discern your personal worth and can address you as respectable in my appeals. The priest's anger seemed to abate. I don't believe you, he said, annoyed, but be frank about what you want. I don't have time for pointless conversation. Venerable Gregorio, I shall be brief, stated our instructor meekly. Listen to me with tolerance and kindness. You know that your spiritual mother has never forgotten Margarita, whose is currently.
Life, sorry, whose life.
Say that again?
Whose life?
Whose life is currently threatened needlessly with insanity and death. Upon hearing this, the Hierophant changed visibly and displayed undisguised trouble on his face. The strange aura around his head revealed darker tonalities. A marked hardness could be seen in his cat-like eyes, and his lips contracted in a rictus of infinite bitterness. I got the impression that he would incinerate us if he could, but he remained immovable in spite of his aggressive expression. You are quite aware that Matilde had in your former wife a much-loved pupil, that tormented daughter's prayers have reached Matilda's selfless and enlightened soul. Gregorio, Margarita has undertaken to live in the body.
Hungry for redemption, renewing aspirations baited her childhood, and now
that she is married in the fullness of her youth, she has strengthened her hopes, desirous of remaining on the beneficent battlefield to redeem her wrongful past. Obviously, you have strong reasons to force her to return to this plane because you have set her on the road to death. I neither reprove nor accuse you, for I am nothing. Even if the Lord were to confer on me such a lofty representative mission, I still would not be able to judge you, except after having experienced your tragedy and your pain. I know, however, that due to love and hatred from the past, she is strongly connected to the rays from your mind, and we all know that sooner or later, creditors and debtors must meet one another face to face. However, her current existence entails a large-scale work of salvation. She married an old partner of the evolutionary battle who is no stranger to your heart, and she will reign maternally in a home in which devoted benefactors will organize a lovely ministry of illuminative endeavor. Spirit friends of the truth and goodness have been prepared to receive her motherly tenderness, like flowers blessed by heavenly dewdrops on their way to precious fruitification. Consequently, I have come to ask you to mitigate your cruel vendetta. Our souls, no matter how impassive, change over time. Time destroys everything, yet it rids us of our entire storehouse of inferiority so that the work of spiritual growth may continue. The matter that serves for our manifestations changes as the days go by. And even if they are or were invincible, the powerful judges whom you obey could never supersede the sovereign authority of the all-merciful, who allows them to act in the name of the Corrigenum as they carry out their tasks for common good. Heavy minutes of expectation and silence weighed upon us. Even so, rather than being discouraged, the instructor began once again in a pleading voice. Even if you still cannot hearken to the resources interposed by the law of the divine Lamb, who urges reciprocal and sanctifying love, do not turn a deaf ear to the appeals of a mother's heart. Help us free Margarita by saving
her from destructive persecution. We are not asking for your personal
concourse. Your indifference will be enough so that we may work with all the freedom we need.
Okay. So, okay, we stop here. I read the first phrase because Philip, for some reason, cannot read the top of the page. For those that think that the English version is it's difficult to understand, there is a lot of difficult words. The Portuguese version is also very, very difficult, just for you to be aware. It's a very elevated Portuguese language that makes it very difficult to sometimes you have to really go to the dictionary to understand the original. Okay, so the first thing here that it's important to note is how Gubbio addresses Gregorio. How do you address a leader that is full of pride and full of himself or herself? You praise them, right? So you start by saying he's not lying here. He's just praising him with what Gregorio really has. He says that your mother, Matilde, say that you have not forsaken your worthiness and that your lofty qualities of character have remained inviolable, despite the difference that the direction you have taken. So you see that when you address these leaders in their pride and vanity, it's an opening for them to be more open, to listen to you. So Gubbio is giving us here a lesson on how to address these difficult individuals. You do it respect, and you do it by praising them to call their attention, not lying, not saying anything wrong, just pointing where you can make a difference. And then Gregorio says that, I don't believe you, but he's open to listen. And then he says, Gubbio says that I underline here because that's how our story goes. Your spiritual mother has never forgotten Margarida, your former wife, as he says later, who is currently threatened needlessly with insanity and death. That's what we're going to see in the next chapter. And when Gregorio hears the name of Margarida, he gets annoyed, right? He doesn't like to hear her name, and he doesn't like to finally find out what they were there to do. And he changes his expression, still silent. But again, Gubbio is there on a mission, and he's going to continue persecuting the mission that he's on. So he continues talking, saying that Matilda is a pupil of Margarida is a pupil of Matilde. Again, Wayne with the names, right? But yes. But we'll try to keep in the translation. It was decided in the very beginning to keep the original names because otherwise it's complicated. How you translate Gubbio into English? You're going to use a completely other name because really, so it's a difficult choice. Anyway, so Margarida is incarnated, and she's battling on the path of evolution. He's married and supposed to receive children, spirits, in her new incarnation as her children to continue on their path of evolution. And then Gubbio goes on a long speech here, when he says, again, appealing to Gregorius' reason, I neither reprove nor accuse you, for I am nothing, humbling himself before the powerful one, so as not to give the powerful one reasons to argue or to enter into a fight. He doesn't want a fight. He just wants to appeal to his still existent goodwill to help, to be able to help. He says that she's still strongly connected with him, and Gubbio asks for them to be able to provide some type of assistance to Margarida. And he tells that we are continue evolving, that we change. Our souls, no matter how impassive, change over time. Time destroys everything, yet it rids us of our entire storehouse of inferiority. He continues talking about the divine laws, the eternal laws that Gregorio knows very well. He just chose to follow a different path. He thinks that he's, as we saw in last month, that he's fulfilling the divine laws by being the judge, by imposing the justice that he believes is the right justice to persecute those that commit crimes. So he's asking, help us free Margarida by saving her from the destructive persecution. And then what he says here is very interesting. We are not asking for your personal concourse. Your indifference will be enough so that we may work with all the freedom we need. So what he's asking Gubbio here is, be indifferent to the work. Don't interfere in the work that we're going to do, either positively or negatively. Let us work. So he's asking a favor for Gregorio to allow them to work. And again, we talk a lot on when you hate someone, how do you move from hatred to love? And again, love in the universal sense. The first step is to move from hatred to indifference. You cannot move from hatred to love without, we're too much of imperfect spirits. So to overcome the hatred, we need to move at our stage of evolution to indifference. When we stop hating and we become indifferent to the person, the spirit we hated, we already making progress. Of course, we cannot love yet. We are imperfect spirits. But if we can move to indifference, we are evolving. So this is all Gubbio is asking Gregorio to do. Be indifferent to our work. Okay? Questions, comments? No? Okay. So let's continue.
Where did we stop?
The Hierophant laughed uneasily and remarked.
Okay. The Hierophant laughed uneasily and remarked, I can see that you know what justice is. Yes, I do, agreed Gubbio sadly. Our host said shamelessly, those who issue orders are want of self-sacrifice. Those who defend order know no forgiveness. The lawgivers portrayed in the Bible determined that judgments had to be based on the principle of exchange, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Since you seem so well informed about Margarita, do you honestly think you can quell the reasons that compel me to decree her death? I am not disputing your motives, said our guide, amid affliction and sadness, but I would dare insist on my fraternal plea. help us save that priceless, fruitful life by helping us, who knows, perhaps by means of the loving arms of today's victim, you yourself may return to the lustral cleansing of the human experience and renew your pathway for the glorious future. Any idea of returning to the flesh is unthinkable, shouted Gregorio. We know, great priest, continued Gubbio calmly, that due to Margarita's connections with your powerful and active mind, any sort of liberating activity on our part would be very difficult without your permission. Promise us freedom to act. We are not asking you to suspend her sentence, nor do we intend to declare Margarita innocent. Those who assume debts before the eternal laws will have to face them now or later in order to pay them off. But we would ask you to postpone the execution of your purposes. Grant your debtor a beneficent reprieve in honor of your mother's devotion. And if possible, time will modify this dolorous process.
With a look of surprise due to the unexpected request for a postponement,
when we ourselves were expecting our guide to demand a permanent repeal, Gregorio considered less scanthingly. I have need of the psychic nourishment that only Margarita's mind can provide me. More encouraged, Gubbio asked, but what if you could experience once again the sweet comfort of a mother's tenderness to uphold your soul until Margarita, redeemed and happy, could furnish you with the sublime bread of the Spirit? The priest stood up for the first time and said, I do not believe. But what if we were to propose such a blessing in exchange for your neutrality regarding our saving efforts? Would you allow us to work concomitantly with the servants who obey your orders? Would you keep from inciting them against us and let us work alongside them as we attempt the restoration? In that way, time would add the finishing touches to your decisions. Gregorio reflected for a moment and replied, it's too late. Why is that? Asked our instructor uneasily. Margarita's case, explained the Hierophant in a significant tone, is in the hands of a phalanx of 60 of my skillful servants. They are under the command of a ruthless persecutor who hates her family. The whole matter could be resolved in just a few hours, but I do not want her to return to my arms with the rebelliousness of a victim in whose inner font I could only gather the turbulent waters of despair and bitterness. She is to be tormented just as she tormented me in another time. She will suffer nameless humiliations, and she will regard death as an asset. Smitten by such suffering,
mind will receive me as a loving and providential benefactor, and she will
envelope me in waves of affliction.
affection.
For something's covering the screen at the moment.
For which I have been waiting for many years.
Any attempt to liberate her would be fruitless. Her ability to reason is being disturbed, and the magnetization work of drawing her to her death is almost concluded. Our guide, however, was not to be defeated and insisted. What if we were to become part of your phalanx, to attempt the work we are proposing? We would attend to the sick woman as your friends and without disrespecting your authority. we would try to carry out the plan that brought us here, bearing witness to the humility and the love that the Lamb teaches us. Gregorio thought for a long while in silence, but Gubbio continued with simplicity and firmness. Granted, granted. Give us your word as a priest. Remember that someday you will meet your mother again, even if you don't think you will. After long minutes of reflection, the priest raised his arms and said, I do not think your attempt will be successful. Nonetheless, I will go along with it. I will not interfere. Then Gregorio rang the bell and told his servants to approach. As if semi-defeated in the battle against his own conscience, he called for a certain Timao, who appeared in front of us with the look of an executioner. Gregorio asked him about the Margarita case and was told that the process of mental alienation was almost finished. It was a matter of just a few days before she would have to be put in a hospital. Somewhat constrained, Gregorio pointed to us and ordered the sinister attendant to place us in the phalanx that was actively carrying out the gradual execution of her death sentence.
Okay, this is the end of the chapter. So here, as they continue the discussion, right? Gregorio tells Gubbio that Gubbio knows what justice is, and then says, "I'm here to defend the order. Those who defend the order know no forgiveness. We follow the Bible that says an eye for an eye." And he continues questioning Gubbio's authority on talking about Margarida. And Gubbio continues to appeal to him humbly, right? Trying to save her life. And then he says that, Gubbio said that he knows that they are connected through, their minds are connected, of course, because of the past. And he asks for, again, freedom to act. He doesn't want Gregorio to interfere, just that. He said, we're not trying to declare that she's innocent. He said, those who assume that before the eternal laws will have to face them now or later in order to pay them off, cause and consequence, divine law. Gubbio is just asking, postpone the execution of your purposes, and appeals in the name of Gregorio's mother, Matilde, and tells him that in time things will change. Gregorio, again, he's pondering what to say and how to act. And he talks about that he needs the mental connection he has with Margarida, the psychic nourishment. So they are connected. Of course, hatred and love, it's very close one to another, right? From one to another, it's a very short path. So Gubbio continues appealing to his senses, saying, what if you have Margarida back but redeemed and happy? Wouldn't you be happier? And Gregorio says, I don't believe that can happen, that this happen. And Gubbio continues asking for him to allow, not to interfere, and let time takes it. The decisions takes time. And then Gregorio says it's too late. And then he explains that there are 60 spirits working in the case of Margarida, and they are under the command of a persecutor who is connected to the family, hates the family. How does this work? You have 60 servants. Are they all connected to the family? No, they are just following orders. They are workers. The leader is the one that has the hatred for the family and the motive to cause all the disturbances. And he gathers a team of spirits that we are going to see in the next chapters, or the team that is working there. And it's going to be very interesting, I assure you, how this process works. But the one that is really connected in terms of leading and hating is the persecutor that we will know later. The name is Saldanha. And Gregorio recognizes that he doesn't want her to return to his arms as a victim, rebellious, and that would only bring him waters of despair and bitterness. He would rather have her coming to him with a more positive frame of mind, but at the same time, he wants her to be tormented. He wants her to suffer because of the suffering that she caused him in the past that we don't know the details. But he thinks that she will come back after the suffering as a transformed spirit in his way of thinking, a spirit that recognizes his superiority and accepts his domination sweetly, mercifully. And that's what he expects from her, not an evolved spirit, because that's not his target. His target is to have her back as a loving to him spirit, submissive and acceptful, not with hatred and desires of vengeance. And then Gubbio continues, let us be part of the group. There are 60 there. Let us be just part of this group that is helping her or attempting to harm her. And we will be there as your friends. We won't say anything. And Gregorio was thinking, and Gubbio is very insistent because he sees and he senses that it's working, that he just needs a little push. So he says, granted, give us your word. Remember that someday you'll meet your mother again. You always bring the mother in these discussions when it's possible, because the mother is always normally the one that affects it. And Gregorio finally says, okay, all right, I'll allow you, I will not interfere. But I don't think you'll be successful. And then he calls this executioner, the look of an executioner is called this Timão, who's going to take them to the other spirits that are working directly with Margarida. And Gregorio points to them and tells Timão to take them to this group of spirits that are working on Margarida. Okay, and that's the end of the chapter. We are not going to hear from Gregorio in some chapters here, because now we're going to deal with Margarida and her rescue and the spirits that are related to her and are attacking her. So we will spend some chapters there, okay? So that's the end of this chapter. If anyone has any questions, doubts, or comments on this one.
I do.
Yes. Okay. Hi, Hudson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to change it. My name's Sarah. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sarah. You are
so
Wayne's daughter, right?
Yes. I'm new to the group today, so I'm trying to catch up on the story here.
Sure.
So I just wanted to make sure I understand the story correctly. Gregorio is an obsessive spirit, but it sounds like he's a priest also. Was he a priest in a human form?
Yes, he was a former pope.
Okay. A
He
pope.
was the Pope Gregory IX.
Okay. And Gubbio
Okay.
is a higher level spirit, and they're in a
Yeah.
negotiation, right? To try to
Yes.
save, well, Gubbio's trying to save Margarita.
Yes.
And Margarita is Gregorio's mother or not?
No.
That's Matilda.
Sorry, it's a lot of names, right?
That's
So
okay. I'm just trying
let
to
us-
understand the connection
yes,
between all of them. so I
Let
can
me
understand the
help you
stories.
catch up, and maybe other people that haven't followed the book. So in the beginning, Andre
Mhm.
Luiz is invited to join on a mission to rescue a spirit that is the leader, one of the leaders of the lower zones. Okay. So they receive in the beginning Matilde. Matilde is Gregorio's former mother. Okay. She's a much evolved spirit, very evolved spirit, a spirit of light. If you read the beginning of the book, you see the description of Matilde as a very highly evolved spirit, but still a mother that wants to rescue her son, who is Gregorio. Gregorio is the leader of a lower zone. So Gregorio is in, what he does is in this city that he runs in the lower zones, a lot of spirits that are dedicated to do evil. It's not suffering spirits. Spirits that are under the dominance of Gregorio are spirits that are inclined to do evil, that take pleasure in doing evil, that have caused a lot of harm to others. So we saw cases, let's say, a mother that killed her children, spirits that do persecutions. So they go to this place, Gubbio. Gubbio is the team leader. Andre Luiz and Eloy, the two workers that go with Gubbio. Andre Luiz is the one narrating to us. Eloy is here, they are the companion. They are there, and Gubbio, the approach that Gubbio takes to rescue Gregorio is first to go through Margarida. Margarida is Gubbio's former daughter in a previous incarnation. So he has a connection.
I'm sorry, 1 second. So they're trying to rescue Gregorio, not Matilda.
Yes. They are, no, not Margarida. They're the final objective of the book is to rescue Gregorio. But in order to get there, they are going through doing the work of rescuing Margarida, who is a spirit that is incarnated. Okay, is a spirit that is living in a physical body, and it is going through an obsessive process. Meaning, and the influence of spirits trying to harm her, and that we're going to see in the next chapter. Okay.
Yep.
Any
Thank
other?
you for,
Yes.
That was good in clearing it up. So they're trying to save Gregorio by him trying to get him, convince him to try to help Margarita, who obviously he has some kind of past relationship with that was very negative, and he's obsessing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's actually he's not obsessing her directly. A group of spirits under his command
under him,
are
under his command.
Yes.
So that's why they say he's in charge of whether they continue to obsess her or not. He's the one who gets to decide to tell the lower people below him whether to stop or not. Okay.
Yeah. So let's say what they just did is if the head of this group of spirits that is obsessing her asks Gregorio what to do, Gregorio will answer, "I'm not going to interfere here. Do whatever you think is necessary." So
and that's the best outcome we can ask for, because you said that's the path then to next is potentially love. So that's going to help him kind of evolve.
Yes,
in essence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Feel free to ask the questions. It's always because sometimes people get, because we are reading a book by chapters, people that miss some chapters, they miss what's going on, and sometimes they don't want to ask. So it's important that someone asks the questions always. Thank you, Sarah.
I just want to make one more comment. I think it's very interesting that we have a priest for, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I think it's interesting that we have a pope
Yes.
in life as being the person who is the head, the leader of a lower zone and obsessing spirits, because that's somebody in the human life who you think is higher level of, higher spiritual level. So I think it's an interesting comment.
We are all humans, and wherever you go, you find those that guide their actions to the higher purpose, and those that guide their actions to take advantage of the positions they have, right? You find that in any organization, either religious or non-religious, right? And if you go to the history of the Christian Catholic Church, you see a lot of the leaders were there for political reasons only. In the Middle Ages, the noble families, their first kid was they inherited, the second one would go to the church, and the third one would go to the military, right? So as to not divide the fortunes. So when the second one goes to the church, they have no inclination for the church. They just were forced to be there. So you end up having these characters that deviated from the path that Jesus taught us, and caused a lot of harm. And many of us still today are face the consequences of our own issues in our previous incarnations with religion and everything related to religion, right? Some people that have rejection of religion today were sure involved in some form of religious political activity in the past that we prefer to not remember, or to avoid facing, in a sense, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're moving to a different chapter. Now we're going to meet Margarida, okay? Chapter 9, Invisible Persecutors. Philip.
The next morning, we went with some ignorant, misguided spirits to a comfortable residence where an unexpected scene was about to greet us. The dwelling denoted the aristocratic status of its occupants, not only by its very large size, but also by the magnificent grounds that surrounded it. We stopped in front of the left wing, and I could see that it was occupied by a number of pitiable spirit personalities, criminal, sinister faces. Judging by their dark auras, there could be no doubt that the place was being watched over by cold, impassive prison guards. I crossed the threshold with a heavy soul. The air was saturated with noxious elements. I did my best to hide my discomfort as I gathered troubling and dolorous impressions. A large group of low-order spirits came into the entryway to probe our intentions. However, following our guide's instructions, we did everything we could to make ourselves look like common criminals. I noticed that Gubbio himself had made his perispirit so dark, so opaque, that if we had not been with him from the start, we would not have recognized him. A merry, bad-mannered fellow named Sergio introduced us to Sardinia, the head guard. He greeted in a hostile manner, but when we said the password that Gregorio had given us, he accepted us as if we were important comrades. So the boss has decided to torment her a bit more, Sardinia asked the instructor confidently.
Yes, he did, Gubbio stated vaguely, but we would like to examine the patient as well as the overall conditions.
The young woman is slowly getting weaker, explained the odd character as he led us down a long corridor permeated with detestable fluidic substances. He accompanied us somewhat graciously, but distrustfully, and after a short pause, he left us alone at the door of a large bedroom. It was a bright morning outside, and the sun was visiting the room through a crystalline window. A young woman, displaying extreme paleness on the noble lines of her face, was thinking troubled thoughts. I could tell that this was Margarita, the obsessed woman that our guide meant to help. Two dreadful-looking discarnates were bent over the patient's chest area, confident and domineering, subjecting her to a complex magnetic operation. That particularity of the scene was bad enough, but my fear grew even when I concentrated all my powers of attention on the smitten woman's head. Interpenetrating the thick matter of the bed where she was lying, there were a few dozen ovoid bodies of various sizes and of a lead-like color. They looked like large living seeds connected to the patient's brain via very fine threads carefully arranged along the Medulla Oblongata. The discarnate persecutors' work was meticulous, cruel. Though through her perispirit, Margarita lay completely bound, not only to her truculent persecutors, but also to the large group of unconscious entities, which, in accordance with the character of their mental vehicle, were vampirizing her energies. Actually, I had observed a large number of cases of violent obsession before, but they were always controlled by fulminating passions. Here,
however, the assault was technically organized.
It was obvious that the ovoid forms had been brought in by the hypnotizers that were controlling the picture. With due permission, I analyzed the patient's violated physical area. I could see that all her metabolic centers were being controlled. Even her blood pressure was under the influence of the persecutors. The thoracic area displayed appreciable sores on the skin, and upon examining them closely, I saw that the patient was inhaling dark substances that not only weighed upon her lungs, but which were reflected especially in the cells and fibers, forming ulcerations on the epidermis. The vampirization was incessant. The normal energies of the body seemed like they were being transported to the ovoid forms, which were mechanicalistically feeding on them with an indefinable sucking movement. I lamented the fact that it was impossible to consult the instructor, because had Gubbio been free to, he would have explained things in detail. But I concluded that the poor woman must have been attached through the central nervous system, since judging by the slow destruction of her nerve fibers and the cells, the sinister purposes of the persecutors were obvious. Margarita was exhausted and embittered. With the vestibular, oh boy.
Yes, that's for Elmo later.
With that element, nerve responsible for bodily balance in the cerebellum controlled, and the optic nerves enveloped by the hypnotizer's influence, her frightened eyes gave an idea of the hallucinatory phenomena that assailed her mind, allowing us to perceive the low level of the visions and auditions to which she was being subjected. I discontinued my detailed observations in order to examine the psychological posture of our guide, who had run the risk of helping that sick woman whom he loved as a very dear daughter. Gubbio was struggling not to betray the immense pity that dominated him before that patient being led to her death.
In my human condition, I realized that if the patient were that dear to me,
I would not hesitate 1 second to apply liberating passes along the medulla oblongata to relieve her of that heavy, useless, sickly mental burden. Then I would fight her persecutors one by one.
okay.
But
thanks, Philip. Like, where is Paco? In English, please, right? As Paco would say. There is a lot of information here. I asked Elmo to help me on all the medical aspects of it, because he understands much better than me all the physical medical aspects of it, right? As well as the spiritual aspects also, of course. But before we go to the physical aspects, let's try to understand what was happening here. So they arrive at this house in a nice neighborhood, as they describe here. But for them to disguise themselves, they had to look like common criminals. Remember, the perispirit is very malleable. For those that understand and know how to modify their forms consciously, they can do it very easily. And Gubbio, Andre Luiz, and Eloy at this stage know how to change their perispiritual appearances. Less evolved spirits will modify their perispirits without understanding what they're doing according to their mental vibrations. So our perispirit may reflect the struggles of our previous incarnation of our physical body, the deformities or their struggles that were in our physical body, and also the appearances that we ourselves feel through our mental vibrations. So Gubbio here was able to make his perispirit so dark that Andre Luiz said that if he didn't know him, he would not have recognized. Why they're doing that? To mingle with the crowd, right? They cannot appear as they are, because they would immediately be unmasked as different, in a sense, spirit. So they need to appear exactly like all the other spirits that surround these places. When he says here, the place was occupied by a number of pitiable spirit personalities. These are lower level spirits that surround us everywhere, and that we allow to be part of our day-to-day lives according to our mental vibrations. So they are introduced to Saldanha. Saldanha is the head of the work there, the one that we mentioned in the chapter before, the one that has the hate for the family, and Saldanha receives them, coldly. But when they talk, they say the password that Gregorio told them to give to Saldanha. Immediately he recognizes that they are there, directly sent by the boss, and he allows them to enter the room and to move freely. When they reach Margarida, what they are seeing here, Margarida is in her bed, is obsessed, but the state of her obsession is very, very heavy. The description here that Andre Luiz goes through, first thing that we say here is the ovoid. We studied about ovoids a couple of months ago in this book. Ovoids are spirits that, because of their mono idea, that one and only idea of hatred, of persecution, or any other ideas, but only one, they lose their physical format of the perispirit. They lose the perispirit becomes an ovoid, the form of an egg, because these are spirits that are completely immersed in a single idea. They are used by these spirits that are leading the obsessive case. They attach the ovoid to her so they can suck her energies. They drained her energies, okay? So they are like living seeds connected to the patient's brain, exhausting her energies. That is one of the ways that they are doing the persecution. She's having hallucinations. She's having very inferior thoughts. How does she allow this to happen? That's very important point here, because they are talking about all this connection. She, of course, because of her past and her mental vibrations, allow these spirits to connect to her. She's not an innocent victim. Okay, this is very important. Nobody is innocent victims here. We are responsible for our actions, and because of cause and consequence, we are facing the consequences of our previous actions. So she may not remember, she may not be aware of why this is happening to her, but her mental vibrations and her past allows this to happen and for this connection to happen. Elmo, I don't know if you have something to say about this medulla oblongata. I really don't know details about this, how this works.
Okay, thanks, Ron. First of all, the first thing that I'd like to suggest is don't let those technical terminology, not even let the brain physiology anatomy to take away from the story itself. It's a very small detail, and the story is much, much bigger than those very small processes. Spiritism is a doctrine of reasoning, is a doctrine that has an association with science, as opposed to most religions. Spiritism is not a religion that walk away from science. Spiritism makes a connection to it. Everything that happens has an explanation. Everything that happens to the physical body, at the very end, would have a spiritual beginning of everything that happens to us. And spiritual seeks to explain everything as much as possible in association to all science, of course. So, Andre Luiz's words over here is like, all the metabolic processes are being deranged in this woman. And one might ask, well, what does the spirit also do with the metabolic processes of the body? What the spirit's action has to do with controlling blood pressure and metabolic processes in the physical body? Well, we should try to explain all those things in association with our science, of course. So we know that our glands are responsible for the maintenance of most of the functions. You know, specific glands like the thyroid, the special thyroid, the adrenals, are the ones that releases very powerful hormones that tells other parts of the body to do or undo things. Put more calcium in the bones, take a calcium off the bones, okay, speed up the metabolic process, consuming more energy. Reverse that process now, stop consuming energy, store energy into fat. All those things are commanded by hormones. Now, there is a chain of command, right? And the very beginning of understanding more our endocrine system, we used to think that the pituitary gland was the big chief. And somewhat later, we discovered that, well, the pituitary gland is extremely important, is important boss, but there is a boss above it with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus sends commands to the pituitary, they send commands to the other glands. That all science knows now, right? But was revealed through Andre Luiz, forgot which book was, that the pineal gland is the big boss. The pineal gland is the one that sends commands to all of the glands, following a chain of command, of course. But the pineal gland, I'm sorry, the pineal gland is the one that really regulates the whole endocrine system. And as I told you before, the endocrine system is the one that regulates most of the functions of the physical body. And the pineal gland is also the one that has a direct connection with spiritual energies. Is the gland is associated with mediumship. Is the gland that is associated of receiving and dispersing spiritual energies. So in the process of obsession, one would expect that those obsessors bombardment of negative energies would go through the pineal gland. And if the pineal gland is disrupted through this bombardment of negative energies, the whole endocrine system will suffer. Okay? And obeying this chain of command that is starting from the pineal, going perhaps, our science does not understand that very well yet, okay? And going down to this chain of command, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and so forth and so on, we reach the more primitive areas of the brain, the basement of the brain, basically. And that is the medulla oblongata. It's the very lowest part of the body, of the brain, I'm sorry. From there, you start the spinal cord that goes down, and all the nerves that innervates everywhere. The medulla oblongata is responsible, therefore. There they have all those very primitive commandments. And we say primitive because all animals have it. Is the commands for controlling heart rate, controlling breathing, how fast you're breathing, how slow you're breathing. The commands through the vagus, the stomach. You see how emotions makes you sick of your stomach? That's the big nerve that the vagus that passes through over there and innervates things. So by taking over the medulla oblongata, or just disturbing the medulla oblongata, it will affect many parts of the primitive functions of ours, which keep us alive, basically. That's why I say primitive. Okay, the respiration, heart rate, the peristalsis, or the movements of the whole digestive system becomes deregulated, and it can cause big chaos to us. The vestibulocochlear, that's big name there for most of us, is the part that goes associated with the cerebellum, is the one that deals with equilibrium. Individuals who has vertigo, who cannot know the room is spinning, those kind of things, is because this vestibulocochlear system is disrupted. So it's very important also. But I think the most important thing is just have for us that connection of the spirit and body, how spirit's energies could actually disrupt the physical body. There is no miracle. Everything should have an explanation. If our science doesn't know now, eventually we will, because we are progressing. And the pineal gland being responsible, not yet proved scientifically, but being the main organizer of the whole endocrine system, and being the one that is in association with our spirituality, once we disrupt the pineal gland with inferior energies, of the under obsessive process, we may disrupt all the physical activities.
Excuse me, Elmo?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Very talkative, I guess, today. So the pineal gland is what you're talking about that's connected with spirituality?
According to Andre Luiz, our science does not understand that yet, or perhaps never will, I don't know.
Okay, according to Andre Luiz, you're saying that's where that you have that information from?
Yes.
Okay, and what is your background in, Elmo?
My background?
Yeah.
Spiritism.
Oh, do you have a
In
medical
terms of
background, I mean?
profession.
Yeah,
your
I'm a
profession.
physician assistant neurosurgery.
Okay. I just wasn't sure where the pineal gland information was coming from.
No,
So
again, I have make sure that it's not coming from the science books. It's coming from
Okay.
spiritism books.
okay, so nothing that you've seen in your line of work has shown a connection to that?
No,
Okay,
it's not my
Thank
area.
you.
It's not my area of work either.
expertise.
So I won't
Okay.
say it.
I understand. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
If pertaining to the pineal gland being, I guess, the center of the spirituality in a person, if I have that correct, this is what it's suggesting. If a person has a disorder of the pineal gland, would they then have also a disorder in a spiritual sense, or no?
It could have a problem with the proper distribution of spiritual energies throughout the body, but then again, that is theoretical.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure that all the statements that I'm making here does not carry a scientific value, for our science does not reveal those things yet. Okay, this is very important. It's not voodoo medicine. It's being revealed by Andre Luiz in his books. It's somewhat being confirmed by some individuals doing very deep studies in the pineal gland, but it is not yet documented in our science yet. Okay.
If anyone wants to do some research, Sarah and
Yeah.
Laura, on the chat, I just posted an article that was published in the magazine Neuroendocrinology Letters, that was written by a group from the Spiritist Medical Association in Brazil, that compare the works of Andre Luiz and what's known now in science. And he says that Andre Luiz, 60 years before actual science is reaching the conclusions he published in the books. So he does on this article the historical, cultural, and aspects of the pineal gland, and compares the theories offered by Spiritism in the 1940s and the actual scientific evidence that you have nowadays. Okay, so it was funny because I just received this yesterday, and there we are. So that's if you Google this, you're probably going to find the article. Okay.
Thank you. Can I just ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Where in the Spiritist books can we find where it speaks about this gland? Do we know possibly where?
Yes, in the book Missionaries of the Light, there are 21 informations about the gland, the pineal gland, in 2 chapters of the book. I don't know exactly the number of the chapters, but the book Missionaries of the Light, which was published in 1945.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There's also some very quickly mentioned in the domains of mediumship. Again, I can tell which chapter. There is also not directed pineal gland, but a relationship, body and spirit in the introduction of the preface of domains of mediumship as well. But again, my main point here is to create a connection, because when Andre Luiz described all those things happen with the physical body, changing in pressure, ulceration of skins, it gives you have to have some line of connection, something that connects something to the other, to go from bad spirits bothering you to now you having all this physiological things going on. The Spiritism, being a doctrine of reason, has to create those connections. Some of the things has been understood by all sciences, some have not yet. There's tremendous work being done right now in connection of emotion and health that perhaps, and I think is going to help lead to approximate spirituality to physical sciences more and more.
Yeah, thanks, Elmo. It's always very important. I agree with you. We should not get lost in details here. But this particular part that we just read is full of information about the process of obsession, right? So I thought it was important, and I thank you for your help, because it really helps us understand the medical aspects of the process of obsession and how it works, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any additional comments here on this part, Elmo.
No, but if somebody's any questions, I'll try to help.
Yes, Wayne.
It's it pretty well describes a horror movie. All the things going on. It's just amazing that it's so descriptive. My mind, it's a horror movie. What we do to ourselves.
Yeah, but it's important here for us to remember that these are special cases. These are not common cases. This doesn't happen every day, doesn't happen to the majority. These are special, very special, and these are the cases that we find in people that end up in hospitals, in hospices, in these houses, these places that help these people with hallucinatory problems. With this, these are problems of obsession, serious problems of the obsessions that are not common, but they happen. And in Brazil, we have these these hospitals that associate psychiatric assistance with spiritual, with the knowledge of spiritism. There are a few of them that do this, and it is, of course, a work that is very incipient in the beginning, but is already been helped by this information that Andre Luiz brought to us in these books, and associated with modern science and medicine that tries to help and assist those patients in need. But again, these are special cases. This is not, we cannot read these and be afraid that we are going to be affected by this sort of of spirits if we, if we do our jobs properly, meaning we are not focusing on doing evil and persecuting others, if we are able to keep our vibrations at an average level, not going down too much and staying down too much, because that's when the spirits connect to us. If we are able to keep ourselves balanced as much as possible, of course, our lives are not easy, so we have struggles, but to try to find balance in our lives is a way to avoid this sort of attacks of spirits. But the knowledge always helps us how to deal with it if we are, if we know someone, we are faced with someone. Luis.
No, just as an additional reference, there's a not as well-known book. I'm pretty sure it hasn't been translated to English. It's part of the Manuel Filomeno de Miranda project called Conscience and Mediunity. That mentions the pineal gland in a certain detail. So sort of interesting, but just so that you have an additional reference, Sandra.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, the title?
The book is named Conscience and Mediunity.
It's not translated. It's not published in English.
Yeah,
it's not in English yet.
Oh, okay.
Project called Manuel Filomeno de Miranda Project.
Yeah,
it's a not that well-known book, but anyway, so you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we have a little more than 10 minutes left, and this chapter goes into they go to a church, they want to attend a mass, and it's very interesting how they describe the spirit population attending the mass and the description of the priest and everything. And I think it's better if we leave for next month, because it's already, we have 10 minutes, we won't have time to discuss. So I rather us discuss a little bit more in what we just read here, and we leave the part that they go to the church for next month. Laura, thank you for publishing the link. She published, she posted the link to the article. So if you want to get it, go to the chat now, because once we end the meeting, it's not going to be there anymore. Regarding those that wrote the article, Jorge Dyer, and Décio Iandoli are very well known in the Spiritist movement, lecturers and doctors associated with the Spirit Medical Association. Giancarlo Lucchetti, I don't know him, but of course, if he's the leader of the article, for sure, he's well known also. There are more authors there in this paper, but they all did a very good research on the pineal gland and comparing the theories provided by Spiritism. So I remember reading this when it first came, and it's very interesting. It's worth downloading and reading if you are curious. Okay. Any other comments, questions here?
Well, Brain Triuno, it's not translated, right? I don't think so.
No, unfortunately not.
It is an absolute fantastic book, but about 500 pages of very technical stuff. It would be very hard to translate.
What book?
O Cérebro Triuno.
It's by Décio Iandoli, Dr. Irvania Prado, and Dr. Sergio Lopes.
Yes, I actually mentioned parts of it when I did my lecture to you guys last year on the mind. I don't remember the title in English.
Yeah.
I've read a part of it, not complete, not the full book.
Yeah, the book addresses deeper the in the greater world, the part that it's described the brain and the three different aspects of the brain, right? The mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That by the end here, the last paragraph I forgot to mention, right? We always mention how Andre Luiz still has some way to go, right? Because he's describing here, and that's how we relate to him. He describes here our reaction, how we would act, right? He said that I would not hesitate 1 second to apply liberating passes along the Medulla Oblongata to relieve her of the heavy, useless, sickly mental burden, and then fight the persecutors one by one. You know, that's Andre Luiz, and the natural instinct that he has to solve the problem immediately. He doesn't still have the longer view and a better understanding on how to address that, and that's why, you know, we relate to him so well when he writes the descriptions of his experiences, and that's why, of course, you always have a mentor leading his work, because there you have someone that has a little more better understanding. And you see that Gubbio is not going to attack the persecutors, is not going to liberate her immediately. Why is that? Because it's a work that it doesn't happen. You cannot do it in a rush. It has to be a cautious and calculated work to rescue this these spirits that are being attacked. Of course, I can give you the spoiler that they are going to be successful, of course, otherwise we wouldn't have the book, right? But it's going to be a very interesting way to deal with the issue. Yes, Luis.
May I, regarding, not regarding, okay, back step. Sarah, I'm just reading the full paper that João, whose reference João has just posted. And in the paper, there are plenty of references to Spiritist literature that talk about the pineal gland. So the Missionaries of the Light is mentioned with page numbers including, but they also mention in the greater world, they mention action and reaction. They mention evolution on two worlds, with including page numbers. So there's plenty of references in that particular paper.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Luis.
But again,
Okay.
I insist that my point is just that we need to try to create a connection of body and soul in order to explain all those statements that Andre Luiz make and relate to the physical body. That's the only reason that I brought about the pineal gland. But it's very complex, and again, our science does not have that much understand. And I don't know if you ever will. No, actually, I believe it will, but how long it's gonna take, I don't know. And what you mentioned, John, is very interesting, because as we read, it becomes somewhat emotional on the reading, because it's such a, as Wayne has said, such a deep thing. We start hearing to question, well, come on, can these guys, doesn't the high order spirits have this authority over low order spirits? Don't put an end on this right now and just, you know, you get almost like Andre Luiz is getting, you know, come on, we have the high authority over here. Let's end this nonsense here and there. But this doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, because the goal is not to end one process. The true goal is to upgrade each one of us to a higher level. And those things are slow. It takes time.
Yeah, again, remembering that she's now a victim, but she's not innocent, right?
Right.
Nothing happens, if we don't have something to expiate, to learn. It's a trial or atonement, right? Everything that happens to us. So it's important always to remember that. Okay.
Yeah, the problem when we get
Go ahead,
emotionally involved in the story, we lose our track of what's right and wrong, and start thinking like Andre Luiz is thinking that I just mentioned.
Yeah, our immediate reaction at our level of evolution is just to go and fight, right? Yeah, to solve the problem yesterday. We still don't have the ability to see the longer view, right? Okay. All right. So let's stop sharing this one. Thank you for your participation. Next Sunday, second Sunday of the month, we're going to study the Gospel according to Spiritism. Okay. If you missed today's initiation into Spiritism, I highly recommend that you watch it. It's the introduction of spirits and the spirit world, and the classification of spirits, classification of worlds. It's a presentation by Luis Lima, a 40-minute presentation, very interesting. That's the initiation into Spiritism that I started posting on our YouTube page. Also, you have a playlist there called Initiation into Spiritism if you want to catch up with the classes. Okay, so today was the third class. On Tuesdays at noon, Jussara is presenting the book Nosso Lar, a study of the book Nosso Lar. According to hers, Marlene asked her to explain a little bit. So Jussara got into it, and now she's fully enjoying it. And she said that there'll be at least a couple of weeks more on the book Nosso Lar that she's going to address it. And you can also find that on our YouTube page, the previous classes. Okay, so this Tuesday at noon. And I think that's all we have. Zoraida, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, of course. To our Father, our Christ, Jesus, to our spiritual benefactors, our guardian angels, who have gone here in participation in helping us in our studies today on the Book of Liberation, understanding the spiritual world. We are grateful, dear Father, for all of the information and studies that we have here that we could understand. We are here today, but we are all going to face the spiritual world and the need to understand, to practice the good, preserving the studies that we are doing now, and always, to our families, to our friends and loved ones. We pray, dear Father, for all those that are going through hardships in hospitals and hospices, who are in need of prayers and of strength and courage. May we be able to continue throughout the week with our studies, with our brothers and sisters. Pray for all that are in need, for our teachers that are so dedicated to continuing this beautiful spiritism of studies. We are grateful for them and the spiritual benefactors. We ask that all of us continue throughout the week with our prayers to help not only ourselves, but our families and those that are in need, dear Lord. For the homeless, for those that are in need in shelters, in hospitals, in hospices. May we keep our prayers focused on them also, and to do all the good that we can while we are in this spirit, in this physical world. We thank you, dear Lord, and with that in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting today. So be it.